Hello guys, welcome to Exercise Physiology exam screencast, and the key focus on this one is going to be muscular strength. Okay, so what we're going to look at, start off, I'll give you like a kind of a question or specification objective, pause it there, because when you get that specification objective, there'll be some kind of help on that slide. So it might be a memory method, it might be a gapped piece of information. Your job is to see what you know from there. Can you write that down on a piece of paper? And if you can't, you can move on to the next one and see the answer, and then start to make your notes from there. But at some point, you need to try and get to the position where you can see a specification objective, and without anything, you should be able to kind of come up with some kind of answer and then translate and extend it into exam terminology. So specification then for strength, we need to know certain things. We need to know different types of strengths. We need to look at strength endurance, maximum strength, explosive elastic strength, static and dynamic. Then whilst we're doing that, we're going to do this together, is you then have to look at ways you can measure strength, the different types of strength. So grip strength dynamometer, 1 rep max, press up or sit up test, vertical jump test. We need to know which one specifically these link to up here. Then we'll have a look at the factors affecting strength. Okay, so going on from there, we need to know the kind of resistance guidelines, how you train to develop the different types of strength. First of all, we'll look at kind of resistance guidelines, etc., how you apply the FIT principle to strength training, and then we'll have a look at the different types of weight training. So we've got free weights, plyometrics, multi-gym, and then we'll have a look at circuit or interval training, which you have to make sure you link to these key things here. Then moving on from there, you've got your adaptations to strength training, and then activities in which sport strength is a key component. So that's your kind of overview. Whenever you want to go back to specification, you can. We start off then, first one, identify and define the types of strength, provide and evaluate a way of measuring each type of strength, given an advantage and disadvantage. Okay, so if I got you to pause now, have a look at that, see what you can come up with. So going on then, what are we looking here? Maximum strength there. So the maximum force, the neuromuscular system can exert in a single contraction. That's your definition. That's how you define it. Then you need to be able to give ways to measure it. Now, there's two ways you can measure this. 1 rep max, okay, which involves working up on weight until you get to the point where you can only lift 1 repetition. You should have a good rest in between each attempt at doing this to allow your PC stores to recover. Good thing about it, it's a direct measurement of maximum strength. But the downside is if you're inexperienced and you're trying to do 1 rep max, that could lead to an injury. The other way you can look at maximum strength is grip strength dynamometer, which is when you hold a handheld kind of dynamometer, put it straight up in the air, arm straight, and then as you come down, you squeeze, you grip the dynamometer as hard as you can, and that will give you a measurement of maximum strength. Now, that's simple and objective. It's simple to set up. It's objective. It measures it kind of factually quite easily. But the downside, of course, is it only measures forearm strength. Okay, so it's very difficult to kind of apply to sport for this one. So going down, explosive strength there. This is the ability to apply force quickly for high intensity movements, short periods of time. Okay, so this is also can be called elastic strength. Okay, and this is measured by the vertical jump test. By a wall, chalk on your fingers, jump up as high as you can, touch the wall, and then it's measured from there. Now, that's explosive strength, as you can see there. High intensity movements, short periods of time. It's jumping, it's bounding, it's linked to plyometrics as a training method. Good thing, easy to set up, and it's valid. Okay, but the downside is it only measures the legs, so it's only measuring the kind of explosive strength in the kind of leg area. Going on, dynamic strength then, the ability in your muscular system to overcome a resistance with a high speed of contraction. So quite similar to explosive, but the difference being that dynamic strength is the one that overcomes a resistance. Going on from there, then, example for how you can measure that, the Wingate cycle test. Don't worry too much about this, it isn't actually specification reference, but that's how you would measure it. I'll move on. Strength endurance. Going on to this then, so ability of the muscles to sustain and withstand repeated muscle contractions. Test for this, set up, press up, bleep tests. Okay, so progressive measure to exhaustion. Okay, looking at kind of doing sequential press ups over different levels. The time between the beeps will get smaller, similar to the multi-stage fitness test. Going on from there, it's good for large groups. However, it can lead to injury, particularly in spinal areas on the sit-up one. Okay, it can be really stressful on the spine overdoing that. So then going down from there, static strength. ability of the muscles to overcome resistance while staying the same length. Okay, so like it'd be like a bridge situation or something, anything, a plank movement, if you can imagine that would be a kind of a way you could test it, but it's not required for this specification. Your job, you need to think 3 areas covered here. So you've got definitions of each type. Okay, on top of that, you've got a test, and you've got to be able to evaluate those tests. So make sure you feel confident with that. Look back at the specification. See how you feel. Going on then, factors affecting strength. Now we use this tag throughout the components of fitness, but this time we've got to add a couple. So you've got tag C now. Okay, so you've just got to make sure that you've got the right ones here. See what you can do from that. Pause it, see if you can have a right. If not, move on. So what have we got then? First one, training specificity. Now the training must be weight training, and it must align to the goals that you're trying to achieve. For example, if it's maximum strength, you'd have to make sure it's between 85 and 95% of your 1 rep max. Age is another huge factor affecting strength, because from the age of kind of 30 onwards, there'll be a decrease in testosterone, okay, which will then lead to a decrease in strength as you get past the age of 30. Gender, okay, males have a higher amount of testosterone, which will mean that males are stronger than women, okay, females, sorry, because women will tend to have the hormone estrogen higher rather than testosterone, which means that their strength might be a little bit inhibited. Going on from there, genetics. Now, genetics here is referring to the individual physiological makeup of the performer, and this really refers to, it's really important. The reason why these are emboldened, these are the 2 that specification referenced. So genetics, the percentage of fast twitch type 2B fibers, or glycolytic fibers, are going to dictate how strong you are. And you must put that into context. For example, if you have a higher number of fast twitch type 2B fibers, this means you're more likely to have a higher strength. Going on, cross-sectional area of muscle. Now, the larger the cross-sectional area of a muscle, okay, the bigger the neuron size. This means you have more forceful contractions. So that makes sense. The wider, the bigger that a muscle is, the bigger neuron that's in the middle of it. Okay, that means that there's more forceful contractions if you have that. Make sure you're putting these into context and saying this will lead to increased strength, or this could lead to decreased strength, depending on which way you're going about it. Going on then. When you're trying to improve different types of strength, you've got to be able to provide the resistance training guidelines to improve maximal, explosive and strength endurance. So just put in here now, pause it. I've done this one. The key thing really you're looking for here is you have a frequency, which needs to reps and sets, intensity, and you have to be working at a certain percentage of your 1 repetition maximum, that thing we looked at earlier to work out your maximal strength. This is not heart rate, remember. And then you have to look at time. So this is the work relief ratio times. Okay, so remember the dot in the middle, and then time recovery. So have a look at that. I've started you here. 3 to 6 sets is always going to be the case, and then if you start from 1 to 5 reps here and work your way up, you'll start to see how that changes. I'll explain them now. So if we go through maximum strength, so this is a maximum force and your muscular system can exert in a single contraction. So that's when you're trying to improve this one then. So to improve that kind of strength, you have to be looking at 3 to 6 sets and anywhere between 1 to 5 reps. Now, obviously, to improve our maximum strength, it needs to be at 85% to 95% of your 1 repetition maximum. The work relief ratio for this will be 1 to 3 up to 1 to 7, and that's because if you don't have those kind of work relief ratios between kind of reps, you're not going to have you're not going to have the time to restore or resynthesize your PC stores, because when they break down to do those muscle contractions, you then need a rest period to be able to get them back again. Otherwise, you're going to be working on strength endurance. So time between sets, after you've done a set, you're looking at 5 minutes. Okay, so that's a big time, making sure those PC stores are fully. And if you see people doing maximum strength training, they do very low reps, you see them having massive rests, because they've got to make sure that the kind of fuels required for explosive muscle contractions or maximum muscle contractions are resynthesized. So your glycogen takes 3 minutes, your PC full recovery takes 3 minutes plus. So you've got to make sure that happens. Explosive strength then, same, 3 to 6 sets. But now we look at this rep here from 5 reps. It's actually 5 to 10 reps. Okay, so 5 to 10 reps now. So slightly less, so more reps, but that means that our intensity is going to be slightly less. Okay, so 75 to 85% of your 1 rep max. And then on top of that, we start to look here 1 to 3. Work rest ratio between when you work and then you have a rest. And you're looking here 4 to 5 minutes between sets as your time period there. Going on then, strength endurance. So this is kind of thing we're looking at circuit training or people doing weight training that has higher reps and a lower weight now. So you think, right, this is the type of people who be looking at 10 to 20 repetitions, 25% to 75% of your 1 rep max. It'll be a lot lower weight, and then you're looking at a work-rest ratio of 1 to 2, okay, 60 seconds between sets. So that's kind of how we're looking there. So a little bit less time to recover because you're trying to work at that resistance, okay. So we're trying to look at that overcoming, sustaining and withstanding resistance. So you've got to have less rest, more reps. Okay, so that's what you need to learn. I think it's easy if you know one, you can work up here on the rep range. Likewise, you can work down on the kind of intensity of the 1 repetition maximum. Going on then, critically evaluate the use of 4 training types to improve strength. These are the training types. What I'd ask you to do is pause it now, read the explanation or the description of the training type, and see then if you can put onto here, what type is it? Can you give an example? Okay, and then you fill in these bits here, and I'll go through those quickly now. So multi-gym then, okay, specialised exercise machines, and they have adjustable weight stacks. So what you've got then is you've got things like a lat pull down, chest press, all the things you see on machines in the gym. Why are they so good? Well, it's safe for beginners, good for general strength development. But the downside, of course, is it's not specific to movement patterns. They're balanced. It's completely balanced for you. Your muscles don't have to work to balance anything, and it sometimes can be misleading to how strong you are. Then free weights. These are non-mechanical freestanding weights that require a spotter. For example, you've got the bench press, squat. These develop sport-specific movement patterns, and also they increase balance and coordination between motor units and muscle fibers to allow you to more forcefully contract. Not particularly safe for beginners though, because you've got to balance it yourself, so it's not particularly good for that early strength development. Circuit training, interval training, series of exercises expressed as work relief ratio. So circuit training, for example, you have a work period time, so you might work for 30 seconds, you might have 30 seconds rest while your partner goes. Yep, so you do things like press-ups and sit-ups, flexible, so it adjusts work relief ratio, so you can work depending on which type of strength you're working on. Then it provides variety. Disadvantage, you must have correct adjustment of interval parameters, so your work rest ratios, etc. Plyometrics, this involves producing an eccentric contraction on muscle groups to initiate a stretch reflex. These include things like jumps, bounds, hopping, really good for developing explosive and dynamic strength. And by doing this, it can help prevent injury in those type of sports, for example, football, rugby, basketball, high jump, where you've got to explosively contract muscles. It can help prevent injury when you're doing it actually in the event. But the flip side, of course, is that it can actually cause injury. Because if you are not experienced in plyometrics, you haven't warmed up, you're overweight, unfit, jumping like that could put a real stress on your ligaments, tendons, and muscle fibers. So going on then, adaptations. Describe the adaptations to strength training. If I put this on now and said to you, right, the first bit, if you can pause it from there, the adaptations to strength training as you get strength. From there, if you move on to right, if that's still making you struggle a little bit, I'll put these down here, see if this helps. The key thing for this, when you're writing it, you must give them context. You must say, whatever you're talking about, has it increased? And what is it that you're talking about? So, first thing then, there's an increased synchronization of type 2B motor units and muscle fibers. Also, there's an increased recruitment of type 2B motor units. So what this means is your brain is switching on more motor units, which allows more forceful contraction. And also, if you have lots of these motor units and muscle fibers in the same area, synchronized, plus recruited, e.g. switched on, working together, coordinating, you have a way more forceful contraction. Okay, these are 2 neural examples because the brain is responsible for synchronization and recruitment of type 2B motor units. Remember talking about motor unit muscle contractions. Man says all, receives an impulse from the central nervous system. Other things that happen then, increased tolerance of lactic acid. So basically by doing lots of weight training, you can kind of resist this lactic acid better via something called the buffering capacity. Okay, so that allows you to use the lactic acid and you can actually go through that pain barrier where other people who start have to stop. It's too painful for them. Going on from there, there's a decreased inhibition of the antagonist muscle. Okay, so what that means is, for example, the triceps will not be as inhibited after lots of strength training, and it can actually help as a recoil to allow the biceps to contract more forcefully. Moving down, there's an increased activity of anaerobic enzymes such as PFK, such as GPP. These break down fuels such as phosphocreatine, glycogen, and allow you to contract more forcefully. Alongside that, you obviously have an increase in glycogen stores, PC stores. These are things inside your muscle that allow you to contract more forcefully. On top of that, if we go down to here, you have an increased hypertrophy and